Hey everyone, Fire here. Today I'm going to be discussing why I am finally back on Team Blue. Now before we get started, I just want to point out a few things. First off, this is not a video about Divine Orb prices, and the second thing is that although I will be explaining why blue altars are better, I am not going to try and convince you what you should play. I'm only making this video so that you can make a more informed decision for yourself. Blue altars being better does not necessarily mean that they are the best option for you. Before I can even make the case for blue altars, we need to really establish their value compared to red altars. In this spreadsheet, I've plotted down the value of all of the items and the weighting of all of the items from both of the different altar types. Now, it's probably hard to read here. I was planning on formatting all of this information, but I ran out of time. I've just been extremely busy the last few days between all of this testing and trying to catch up on sleep. So I've left out the scarabs as well. As you can see here, I've just sort of given them average values, and the reason for that is the scarab options between the two altars effectively cancel each other out. Their real average value is something like close to 2 on average per scarab, but that's a story for another day. Alright, all we need to really care about is we have to take the chance for a certain outcome to appear, and then we multiply it by the value of the item, and that gives us a sort of adjusted figure here, and then we add all these figures up and we can figure out the total value of each altar, and we just compare them to each other, and as you can see, they're pretty close. Now, I did say this was not going to be a video about Divine Orbs, and I'm going to prove it to you. So, I'm going to adjust Divine Orbs down to 200C, and as you can see, blue altars is still not that far behind red altars. If Divine Orbs were hypothetically 200C, for all of the reasons that I'm about to explain to you, this is a very acceptable difference. I would still be playing blue altars even if Divine Orbs are 200C. This video is not about Divine Orbs. And precisely what we're trying to measure here is the value per piece of loot that drops per minion altar you've clicked on for that map. Now, every single minion altar has a 1.6 to a 3.2% chance to drop an item. Doesn't matter whether it's a Divine Orb, a Div card, Chaos Orb, Scarab, it's got the same chance across the board, and the keystones are just buffing the rewards by 50%, so we can kind of discount them. They're cancelling each other out, kind of like the way the Scarabs cancel out each other in the respective pools. So what we're saying here is that every time you click on a minion altar, and then every time a piece of loot drops, that loot, on average, is worth 0.64C if you're doing red altars, and 0.63C on average if you're doing blue altars. Now, the really cool thing about analyzing our data in this way is that we can apply formatting to it to sort of learn a lot more about where we're actually deriving the value of these altars from. Now, if you look at blue altars, over here, you can see that most of the value of blue altars is coming just from Ickers and Divine Orbs, right? So there's actually not that many outcomes that contribute to the overall value of the Divine altar being, the overall value of the blue altar being 0.63. But if you look at the red altars, you see that the value is pretty evenly distributed across here. You have all of the embers showing up, you have chisels, unmakings registering on the scale, you have regrets, chaos orbs, awakened sextants. They're all contributing to the overall value of the altars. And something else you can sort of figure out from all this is, over here we can basically analyze which drops are going to be worth more than 0.3C. So at this time in the league, I like to turn off a lot of things on my filter that are worth less than 0.3C. So the things shaded in green are going to be the items that are going to show up on my filter and therefore worth clicking when they show up as a reward type. And the ones not shaded in green, obviously, are the things I'm going to most likely be ignoring. Now, over here, you can see that pretty much 2/3 of all the red altars we want to click, right? 2/3 of them are going to be offering these rewards over here, and we want them every time. On the other hand, with blue, only 20% of the altars are clickable, really, right? The other 80% are junk. You don't want them. Now, that seems bad at first, and we've been sitting around saying blue altars are terrible because 80% of them are bad, right? But I'm going to explain why this is actually really, really, really good a little later on. Anyway, let's move on, and now I'm going to explain my reasoning for why I believe blue is better than red. Now, up until this point in the league, we've been functioning under the assumption that blue altars gave less overall loot compared to red altars, and I've just explained to you how that's not really true. They give pretty much the same amount of loot. So now, rather than thinking of blue as this like jackpot or a gamble that it's worth less money overall, but maybe we can chase a dopamine high, we have to sort of change the way we think of it. Would you rather get 8 divines at the end of 200 maps, or would you rather pick up 0.6C at a time, eventually equaling 8 divines at the end of 200 maps, but you have to still liquidate all that stuff. You have to pick all those items up, put them into your dump tabs at the end of every, say, second or third map. You then have to sort them out, liquidate them, and turn them back into the 8 divines that I originally offered you, that you could just have at the end of the 200 maps. That's the choice we now have to think about. It's no longer this big high roll gamble. It's just a choice of, do you want all of your loot once every now and then, or do you want to get it periodically, but you have to work to turn it back into divines? Just think about how much extra clicking there is. I'll just bring up the calculator over here, and you can sort of see it for yourself. So, divines are worth 300C. Let's just, I don't know, humor me here. Let's say the average divine altar is worth 8 divines. Okay, so 8 divines times 300C divided by 0.6. If you want a divine altar's worth of loot, that's about 4,000 extra clicks. That's 4,000 extra clicks to loot items that don't drop in stacks with other things. You need to move your character physically every time you pick up that item. You have to deposit that item individually every time, right? This is a lot of extra micromanagement. It's a lot of extra trading that adds up over time. Think about how much extra time you spend in every map looting red altars. It adds up over time. I would probably estimate I'm spending maybe on average an extra 20 seconds per map doing red altars just because I need to pick up all the loot. But with blue altars, I can just get all that loot, say, once every day or once every few days, depending on what sort of strats I'm running and how fast I'm running them. And yeah, I can just get all the loot in one go. Okay, remember I showed you guys the colored cells and I talked about altar investment and how we had to click the minion rewards for red 2/3 of the time, whereas for blue we only had to click it 20% of the time. Now, I'm going to explain why that's really good for us. So overall, you get to click the quant and rarity option more. That's what that means. That means every time you are doing any strat whatsoever, if you're doing blue altars over red, you're just passively getting more quant. You don't have to click on the minion reward altars in order to eventually get that 0.63 per map. All you need to do is click on the Ickers every time they come up. You need to click on the divine altars when they're offered, and you can be pretty certain that you're getting most of the value out of the altar type just from those loot types. So every time quant's offered, you can pick quant. Whereas if you're running red, you have to click on the minion rewards pretty much every time they're offered. Every time you get chisels offered, unmakings, regrets, chaos orbs, sextants, etc., you have to pick those options. You just can't afford to pick quant. That means that with blue, blue's value is actually a lot higher because a quant is adding to even more value. We just can't really measure it, right? If you're stacking 300 quant on a map, you don't know how much of the quant is coming, or rather how much of the loot is coming from the altars or not, so we can't really measure it, but we do know that if they're both equal but blue has more quant, blue is better. There's so much more to talk about why this player quant stuff is good, but I'm going to point out a fun little perk. Okay, so the blue and the red altar rolls for quant are a little different. If you look at it, this makes it look like the blue altars are a little weaker, but when you add in Eldritch Gaze, the blue altars give the same amount of quant as the red altars, and they give even higher rarity than the red altars. So blue is better than red as far as quant and rarity go, and you might be thinking, but if you're factoring in Eldritch Gaze, you have to factor in Wrath of the Cosmos. The red altar guys, they're going to be getting their quant showing up a little more often, so surely that means red is better. No, not at all. Remember we discussed how you have to click the minion altar option most of the time when it's red? Well, with blue, you don't have to. Remember, you can pick quant every time, so you get to pick the buffed version of the quant rarity mod as blue pretty much every time it's offered, and red, you just can't access this stuff at all, even though you're accessing a weaker roll. Once I learned that I could run blue altars without paying this penalty of having less overall loot, and that I was actually gaining quant, I decided that there were going to be some strategies I wanted to explore to push the limits of this, and maybe see if old strategies could be enhanced by this knowledge. And to start with, we have to talk about why pack size is so good for Eldritch content. Now, pack size increases the amount of monsters in an Eldritch pack, and that means you have more chance to spawn an Eldritch altar, but it has a second benefit, and these benefits kind of multiply with each other and have exponential scaling. See, you're not just spawning more altars, you're also getting more loot per altar because there are more Eldritch mobs to kill, right? More Eldritch mobs to kill means more of each reward type dropping. This means you can cycle through and hit these divine altars faster, and when you do hit the divine altars, you are more likely to high roll like I did and get 20 divines rather than low roll like some other people are and getting 3 and 4 divines despite getting the divine altar in the middle of the map. Now, pack size juicing lends itself to quant stacking, and I'm going to explain how we're going to be quant stacking. So remember I said, like, with blue altars, we can actually pick the player reward option, which offers quant pretty much every time it's offered. Well, now I'm going to explain how we're going to get it offered as often as possible. So if you run Mausoleum that can't spawn a boss, thanks Snoobay for telling me that, or you run City Square File, any kind of like Harbinger farm, where you're running and killing the boss first, or you're even doing Mesa, even though I personally don't like that one, you can cancel out the boss altars, and that means every single altar that spawns in your map will have both a minion reward and a player reward option. I actually am not doing this for the minion rewards, even though this does mean you will get the minion Divine Altar more often at the expense of the boss Divine Altar. We really care about the Quant here, right? Okay, so with the way the weightings currently work, every time you get offered a player reward option, 2 out of 3 of those are going to be the Quant rarity stuff that I said is really cool, right? So 2 out of 3 of all the altars are going to have player Quant and rarity, and then 4 out of 5 of those, I believe, yeah, so 80% of those are going to be choosable, right? Because the alternative is going to be a minion reward option that we don't care about. So anything pretty much that's not Divine Orbs, Exalted Orbs, or Ickers. And this leads to a weird snowballing effect because we are stacking so goddamn much Quant every single map, and we're juicing pack size. We are massively over-sustaining the amount of maps we're dropping, so I'm getting roughly 50 maps back for every 13 that I run, and I'm only investing Rusted Scarabs. These are like 4C maps. I'm chucking on like Beyond or Domination onto my map device, whatever I'm feeling like. Sometimes I just run the base Quant, and basically we are shitting out maps, and then we can Val Orb all our maps, and we can pick out only the 130% Quant maps, the 8-mod corrupted ones, and we're only ever running 8-mod corrupted maps. We don't need the Sextant to sustain our own corrupted 8-mod maps, because this strat just produces so many maps that you only run the good ones, and that further leads into this cycle of having really high Quant with really high pack size, and then getting lots of Eldritch Altar loot, lots of extra Harvest Juice, and lots of extra maps to resustain the cycle. And lastly, I just want to point out that 350% Quant map that you saw from the thumbnail of this video, that was a real map. I totally forgot to get footage for it, or rather, I made a decision not to turn on the record button because although the Quant looked insane, I actually low-rolled the hell out of that map and didn't get anything very impressive, but it does show the limits of this strategy, and I really believe there are going to be ways to push over 400% Quant this league. I have a plan for how to do it. I don't want to share it so I can potentially be the first one to do it, but yeah, I think 400 Quant is definitely something that we're going to be able to see by the end of the league, and I do also want to point out that 350% is insanely it's a massive high roll. I think my average map is probably it ends at around 250 to 270% Quant. I don't actually hit over 300% Quant that often. Those are the real high rolls where you get like 7 to 8 altars in a map, and most of them are Quant options. As you can see here, it was pretty much almost exclusively Quant and rarity, and then I think we had like 1 map reward option and 1 div reward option. When you really break it down, the choice here is between having consistent loot or having inconsistent loot, but not having to spend nearly as much time looting and also receiving extra Quant passively for any strategy that you do. Now, when you look at the rarity of blue altars, 1 in 1,200 minion altars, that seems pretty bad. But when you consider that a lot of you guys are doing already City Square, where you're running to the boss and cutting out boss altars, or some of you guys are doing Snoobay's Mausoleum Farm and you're never encountering boss altars at all, even from the start of the map, you're already making that number a lot smaller. And then a lot of you guys are doing pack size farming, right? So a lot of you guys are doing Growing Hordes, you're maybe doing Wandering Path, anything along those lines. You are generating more altars per hour, you're generating more minion altars per hour than a lot of other people. So you're getting that 1 in 1,200 number right down. You might realistically be able to see a Divine Altar 1 in every 200 maps. Now, the pack size Beyond juicing that I'm doing right now, if I remove the Beyond from the strat, which is totally fine, by the way, the strat started off without Beyond being added to it, I can get through these maps in under 3 minutes. This means realistically, if I were an inhuman, if I were a robot, basically, I didn't need to take breaks, I could get through 20 of these maps in an hour. After 12 hours of doing maps like this, I get myself a Divine Altar. So I think if you're going sort of really hard, the way people typically do for their Mage Bloods in the first few days of the league, where you are putting upwards of like 16 hours of gameplay into the game, you could be averaging with a lot of these strats 1 Divine Altar per day. On the other hand, you could be a totally inefficient player. You could be doing these Alch and Ghost strats instead, maybe, or maybe you just play 5 to 10 maps a day because you don't have a lot of time to play. You're probably not seeing a Divine Altar until next month, if at all. That's totally possible. Some of you guys watching this video are literally never going to see a Divine Altar again, probably, and that's okay, right? So some of you guys just want to play the red altars, I think. I don't need the money anytime soon. I don't have my reroll. I don't have any rerolls scouted out. I don't need upgrades right now. I'm fine waiting a day or two to get my Divine Altar so I can cash out on all the loot that I've been missing out by not running red altars. But some of you guys really just can't afford to do that. For some of you guys, taking the red altars and investing all that extra time into looting lower value items is actually going to be a lot more worth it for you in the long run, because you're going to be able to access upgrades that you need right now, not say 3 or 4 days from now, or maybe you never get them because you never get the Divine Altar, right? I don't know, but for a lot of you guys that are in that position, the quant stuff doesn't really bother you that much anyway, right? You're probably not doing any strategies that benefit that much from the quant, so it's totally up to you guys to decide which one is right for you. It's not really my place to tell you guys play red or play blue. We're at a point now where it's a viable choice, whichever one you want to do, and hopefully this video has helped you make your mind up between those two options. If you like this video, I would really appreciate a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.